How will you help your team commit to the right amount of work? We are going to handle this question today. And in today's video, the reason why I want to focus on this question because this question actually encompasses many other questions. And the reason this is one of the questions you're not going to miss in a Scrum Master interview, because if you know how to help your team commit to the right amount of work, it means that you understand the difference between capacity and velocity. You know how to help your team commit to the right amount of work, which is load. You know how to help your team estimate the right amount of work and to break down story correctly. So I'm going to handle all of this in this video. First, let me give you more or less a direct answer you can give to a recruiter if you are being asked this question. How would you help your team commit to the right amount of work? My approach will be, thank you very much for this question. I do understand that committing to the right amount of work is one of the biggest concerns of a Scrum team, because if you don't know how to estimate what you should take, then you are always going to give a faulty recommendation to your stakeholder. And that is a very big issue because it doesn't build trust. So what I have done to ensure that my team commit to the right amount of work, number one, I ensure that I understand the right capacity and the right velocity they should commit to. And this is because I also understand what it means to estimate story rightly. And in my team, I pay attention to the Fibonacci sequence. And but not just that, helping my team to be invested in the discussion, making sure there's so much clarity in the way in which they discuss the product backlog item they're committing to, making sure that they understand the description and the acceptance criteria, and every story it's ready before it moves into the backlog, into the spring backlog. Now, when I mean ready, for me, a definition of ready simply means that the story should be well understood by every developer. It should have clearly written description and acceptance criteria, and it should already be assigned to a developer who will be working on that story. And of course, it should have a story point. The story point gives us an idea of the effort which we are going to use in order to commit in order to complete the work. If all of this is put in place, then we are going to communicate effectively to our stakeholder, and there will be no surprises at the end. That was that easy, right? But now the reason I'm able to give you this in a very short amount of time, touching all the different area, is because I have done some work in the background. And this is the work many people don't want to do. But then if you can stay with me for a bit and let's do some of this work, I'm going to show you how you are able to decide, or you're able to understand the capacity and the velocity of your team. And then from there, I'm going to show you how you use that information in order to help your team commit to the right amount of work, right? So let's go. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for today, and let's see what we can do for today. All right, perfect. So now, right in front of me, what I have, if you can see my screen, good. Hopefully, I'm sharing the right screen. This is also some of the common thing you need to do as a Scrum Master. You need to understand how to share your screen. Most of the time, you're going to be sharing your screen, right? Which is why practice and having demonstration is very important, not just doing question and answer online. You should find yourself a community that can help you actually practice most of this. Now, let's look at this. This is my capacity planning sheet, right? It's a very simple. You can create this all on your own. There's no mystery out there. So I'm assuming that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 team members. And now John is our Scrum Master. Peter is our product owner. Tony is our tester, right? And then Natasha is a back-end developer. Robbie, back-end developer. Emma, front-end developer. Frank is our back-end developer, and Beth is our front-end developer. So this is a composition of my team, right? I'm assuming that I'm building a payment system for Salesforce, right? To enable them effectively collect their payments. So that's the composition. Now, the other things which you need to take into consideration is the default velocity. The default velocity is if every of these team members were available full-time, what amount of work will they be able to take? Which is 8, right? Let me move this column. Let me move this column. Let me see. Let me move this to the right. Shift to the right, shift to the right. Where's it? Where's it? Where's it? Where's it? Okay, I think I'm just gonna simply get it. And then I come in here and I paste. Oh no, I mess up every step. Okay, for the sake of learning, I'm just gonna leave it like this. Okay. Yeah. So the default velocity is here. So it's showing that if everybody was available, we're gonna commit to 48 story point. This is a default. This is for a new team where you want to help them to start understanding how to plan work. But then this second one, which is the average velocity, is used for a team that has been working for at least 3 months, right? At least 6 sprints. Now you take the average amount of work that they're able to commit to, which is what? Let's assume that the average amount of work this team is able to commit to is 42, right? So how do you get the average? Just by if they work for 6 sprints, add all this your velocity, the amount of work they've been able to complete for that 6 sprint and divide by 6, you get an average. Now, the actual is what you are using for that specific sprint. Now, remember, you don't calculate capacity for Scrum Master and Product Owner, no. So we come to our tester, Tony, and say, okay, Tony say, look, I'm only available for, I'm taking 2 days off, right? Any amount of days a developer is taking out, we subtract it from the default. So he's taking 2 days off. I subtract 2 from 8, I get 6. Now, if you see here, you see that Natasha is available full days, 8 days. If you look right here, how many days is Robbie available? Robbie said, I'm taking 5 days off. I subtract 5 from 8, it gives me 3, right? So when you see this number, this is what they can commit to. All right. And now this number gives you an idea of how many days they are taking up of the availability. So you simply look at the default and the availability, and you can know if they are taking any day off or not. So if I come today and say, who are the people who are not taking day off this spring? You can see people that have full capacity. That's going to be Frank and Natasha. They're not taking any day off. So we already understand the people who are not taking any day off. Who are people who are taking 1 day off? You right, see, Emma is taking a day off, right? Because we subtract 1 from 8. Tony is taking 2 days off. Robbie is taking 5 days off. And then Bert is taking 5 days off. Now, when we add how much they can actually do for this spring is what is 37. But remember, if we're even going by default velocity, it means they should complete 48. If we go by average velocity, it means they should complete 42. But the either default velocity or average velocity is just to guide you to understand what is the difference between what they're capable to commit to this sprint and what they have normally been committing to. So it only helps you play a guide and guide you. So we are assuming that we're keeping 10% away for what? We want to keep 10% for fixing bugs, technical debt, and all of that. So if we say 10% of is approximately 40, right? 10% of 40 will be about 4 story points. So if I subtract this, it means that we should be looking at planning around 30 story points. So you already understand what your team can commit to. That's the first point. Now, the second point would be, how do we ensure that we match this velocity? Okay, this now go to both planning and backlog refinement. Now, this is my Jira board, right? I'm going to assume that this is the sprint through which we are planning. But one of the things you notice is that although this says Sprint 7, what is happening right here? What is happening right here? Realize that most of this Sprint has not been refined, right? You just have to do. It doesn't even have who is doing. It's not assigned to any person. It's not linked to any epic. There is no story point apart from one over here. So let's consider this as our backlog refinement. And I'm going to use this opportunity to also explain how you can split stories, right? So, and someone asked the question, and I did promise that I'm going to do a video that helps you how to split stories. So I'm going to go to this story number PMA-36, which says debit card deposit. Right. Now the debit card deposit, okay, it's linked to this epic. So I click the story point, the story ID. So if I click the story ID, what happened? It opened a window to the left, but since I'm the facilitator, I need all the team members to see clearly what is under this. So I'm going to come in here and I click it open. So when I click it open, my role as a Scrum Master is to say, hello team, do we understand exactly what we need to do in order to complete this story? The story have no description, it have no acceptance criteria. So the first thing the team is going to be thinking about is like, okay, what are we expected to do here? Right now, remember, you, the Scrum Master, have the screen. So many people are like, oh, I'm a Scrum Master. Do I need to know how to write user stories? Yes, I be you the one writing user story? No, but assuming you are the one sharing the screen and this is empty, and then the PO say, oh, this is what will be under this story. You should be able to write it, not say, oh, you know what, I'm not the person writing user story. You should be able to write it, right? Which is the reason why you need to practice all of this. Don't just go be on one point looking at YouTube video and answering. You need to get into practice to practice all of it. And most of this you cannot practice on your own, which is why you need a community of practice, right? This is why you need us in order to close the gap easily, right? We're not asking you if you need us. You need us in order to do that. We're going to help you how to do this faster. Okay, perfect. Now we have a debit card deposit. So we are assuming that as a user, I want to be able to make as many deposits as possible, or I want to be able to make as many deposits as possible so that I want to be able to make payments or deposit into my account at any time T, so that I'm not I'm trying to find out now. What I'm trying to do here is that for us to write a user story, we need to have the who, the what, and the why, right? So I'm going to be as a debit card user. This is the who. What do we want to do? I want to be able to make deposit without restriction. Okay. We want to make deposit without restrictions, right? Why do we need a deposit without restriction? So that I can keep my money secured in my account anytime I get paid. Okay, let's say if we're restricted, maybe sometimes you can get paid and money will not get to your account because you've already had your 5 deposit. All right, so now we can go to acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria, we can write acceptance criteria in 2 formats, right? We have the given, then, when format. Okay, so this is one format, but the way I always like to help people understand what acceptance criteria is, it simply means what do we need to confirm, or what do we need to see to ensure the work is done properly. So this is the meaning of acceptance criteria, right? So what will I need to see? I can make deposit at any given time without restrictions. Okay, so we already, this is an acceptance criteria, right? I can make deposit of any amount. Okay, so I can make deposit of any amount, right? So we are trying to do what? We are trying to build to make sure that when the developer build the work, it meet the need of the user. We can have as many as much as possible. I'm just illustrating this to show you exactly what is done. When this is accepted, what happened? We at this point when we're still estimating, we can go ahead and do our story pointing. Now, story pointing, we use what we call the Fibonacci sequence in order to do story pointing. And in order to use the Fibonacci sequence, if your team is new, I always advise use the poker planning board. If your team is not new to poker plan, they've been doing this for a while, you just need to say, okay, team, what do you think it's going to, what effort do you think we're going to require? And just you ask them to put their comment on the chat, right? So you can have about 5 people. Let's assume we have 5 developer in our team right here. You want everyone to participate. So and Beth says that okay, I'm just gonna put here story point in SP. All right. Beth says I think it's gonna be a 7. It's not 7, an 8. Atasia I think it's a 5. And Robbie says a 5. And Emma says an 8. And then Frank says a 3. And then Beth says it's a 5. Right. So everyone has put their comment on the chat box. Right. So and what, as you're the Scrum Master, you're not taking the average, you're not taking the majority. If we go by the majority, we'll go with 5. If we go maybe with an average, maybe the average may land us somewhere around 6. But the goal of estimation does not mean that we pick a number, an average or so. It's to understand. So you're the Scrum Master, you're going to ask you're going to ask Frank, hey, Frank, why do you think it's a 3-story point? You start by those who are the extreme. Frank thinks, oh, I think it's a 3-story point because we've already done a lot of the work. We've already built most of the framework when we work on the gateway during the last spring. So this is just going to be to build up the layer, and I think this is not going to be so much work. And then at that point, I go, oh, Tony, what about you? So, okay, now with the explanation of Frank, I understand. I think it's going to be a 3, right? So Tony has changed his mind from an 8 to a 3. I go to Natasha. Natasha say, oh, I still think it's still going to be a 5, despite the fact that this work is already there. I go to Robbie. Robbie say, okay, based on Frank's explanation, I was thinking 5, but I don't have any problem keeping 3, given that most of the work is already done. Now I go to Emma. Emma say, okay, I understand. I think I'm going to go somewhere around 5, given that case. Now I go to Beth. Beth says, okay, I wasn't thinking about what Frank says, so I think it's going to be a 3. Now, you see, many of the people, most of our conversation is doing around 3 now. I will now come to Frank. I come to Emma. Emma, would you mind us keeping a 3, or do you want to stick with your 5? In most of the cases, Emma will say, okay, 3 is fine with me. I come to Natasha that way, and this is still fine with me. Right. So what happened? I go back to my stuff and I do what? And I put a story point of what? 3. Okay. Now, if I go back to my bot, let me go back to my bot. You realize that what? It has a story point of 3. So we do this for all the work until we have all our required work. So I'm just going to put the other one randomly since we already have a demo of what a story point should be like. Right. So I'm putting all of this in here. For I think for kind of, when I work with my team, I always don't encourage them to have an 8 story point. Number one, because most often it will be a carryover, especially if the person working on it is not so experienced. It's quite an amount of work. So in this case, I will come in here, like let's do some story splitting here. I'll come to 38 and I'll say, okay, TVB, do we think that there is a way in which we can split this story into two? And someone will say, oh, okay, I think we can split the back end and the front end work. Or someone can say, pay TVBs, we can build the a back end work, or we can build the infrastructure work separately, and then build the connect the APIs for the payment separately. So in that case, we are going, this story was 8. We want to split this story into 2. So how do we split the story into 2? I'm simply just going to come here, right? And I'll take clone this story. So I'll come here. This is clone. Clone simply means that I'm duplicating the same story. So we want to, when you go to clone, I'm going to obviously take back the clone. I'll put here that word, APIs. API. So we need to do the infrastructure differently and the APIs. So I do API clone. So if I want to keep it in the same spring, I'm going to do what? Clone spring value. So if I clone here, let's go back here and see where it is. You see this, it remains in the same spring. But if I did not click that clone spring value, it's going to go to the bottom of my backlog. So if I go back to this story, now bees, I can insert come in here, then I will need to rename this one as what? Infrastructure. So I've been able to do this one. So if I go back to my board, what am I doing here? What I simply want to do here is that, okay, this has been split into 2. So let's say this become a 5-story point, and then this other half become a 3-story point. You see that? So we have been able to split this story into 2. But if we go back to our capacity planning sheet, realize that 33 is a guide that's going to help us to know that we already have enough story points. But if we look at an average here, we are around what? 24 plus 5 is around 29. So I'm going to look at how I can pull maybe more work into this actually backlog. So let's say we estimate this work to be somewhere around a 5-story point, right? Okay, so this is going to go to 29 plus what? 5. This gives us around 34, which is good enough. Okay, so when this work is being done, now how do you ensure that the developer pick their work? Remember, we don't assign work to the Scrum Master, to the developers, but how do we actually get them to do the work? I'm going to come here, and then we're going to look at work that it's most often. Now, the 2 things. Most often you don't separate testing work from what? You don't separate testing work from development work. So in all of this building work, testing is already kind of considered, right? So let's say that the work that require testing for this entire work amount to, let's say, about 13-story point. Why the capacity for our tester in the team was only 6-story point. How do we handle that difference? How do we handle the difference, right? So the capacity of our tester is 6, but then the amount of work that we already know that we have what? We have a deficiency in the testing capacity. So we need to find a way on how to resolve that. So that's already an impediment on this sprint. So in that case, we could request for resources, or most of the stories that are going to be blocked at the level of testing. So most of the cases we can find a workaround around this, but in some of the cases, we can also look at how to swap with work that require less testing, right? So those are some of the ways we can build it. But now, looking also at my current sprint backlog, this is what we do during backlog prioritization or backlog refinement. We realize that this story doesn't have an epic, so I can easily link this story to an epic, right? Okay, so I'll go to our developer, which is going to be, I'll go to uh Natasha as a back-end developer. I say, okay, Natasha, you have full, what can you take? Natasha say, okay, I'm going to take story 36 and 37, consider this back-end work. So I pull story 36 and 37 to the top of my backlog because this is already taken. And I'm going to consider this assigned to Natasha, right? Okay. And then I go to our next developer. Our next developer is going to be Ruby, and Ruby is also a back end. Ruby will be picking work that is on the back end, which means that the work that's prioritized here must consider the capacity of our team member. Ruby says, okay, I think I can work on 34. And Ruby has how many? Let's look at the capacity of Ruby. The capacity of Ruby is it's only 3 story points. So Ruby can only take work that is 3 story points. Ruby say, okay, I'm going to work on story 40, right? I pull 40 up here, and then I make sure I assign it to Ruby. Okay, I go now to our next developer, who is going to be what? Emma. Emma has availability of 7. Emma is taking a day off. Emma says that, okay, I think I'm gonna handle 34, and I can also handle 62. But then you realize that 34 and 62 already give 8, which is a bit above Emma availability. And then at this point, like, Emma, are you sure you can do this? Like, okay, I'm gonna do this, right? It's just one extra, so I'm gonna handle this. Now I go to Frank. Frank is available. What? Frank is available full time. So Frank says, okay, I'm gonna take 38 and 39. All right. Frank said, I'm gonna take 38 and 39. Now 38 and 39 give us what? 10 story point, which is 2 story point above Frank capacity. Now I cannot say no to Frank. I just like, oh Frank, this is a bit above what you can take. Frank said, yeah, I'm aware of that. I can do that, right? Now I go to my last developer, which is Bet. Bet is available for 5. And Bet says, okay, I'll take the last one, which is 5 story point. Now you realize that although we actually had an average, our availability was 33, we've actually taken work that goes beyond. So this is a guide, right? Frank could also say, you know what, I think I can also, let's see, this story is also related to CB pay. So if I do this, I think I can also do 43. Let's put 43 in here. I know it's going to be a bit, but I think I can do it. It's just going to be 2 story point for me. So we add that in here, and Frank can do this. Now, when you have a performing team, you realize that they will not be so much picky on, oh, I have only 3, I cannot take more than 3. Your goal as a Scrum Master is to guide them to understand that when they commit to it, they need to put in the effort that shows that they can do it. So we've understood how we calculate our availability and how we ensure that every team member is taking the right amount of work. Now, when this is done, what happened? We go ahead and start our sprint. Now, if I want to start my sprint here, it's going to ask me, I have 9 issues included in this sprint. It's a 2-week sprint, right? So if I say 2-week sprint, it's starting today, then ending now. Now, in most of the company, there's a cut-off time. And the cut-off time is that what? The cut-off time should be, we do 11 p.m. So 11:30 p.m. that day that we should not close before midnight. That day the storage should be closed. So if I put 11 p.m. midnight, it showed me that the day that I'm closing, I should close for here. But look right here, my sprint goals are not yet written. How do we know our sprint goal? I'm going to take you back to the board. Remember, sprint goals are what? Related to the epic which we're working on. Right here, we look at, we're working on credit payment, credit repayment, credit repayment, home button, credit repayment, credit repayment, credit repayment, credit repayment. So if I'm doing this, I can put my sprint goal as a team, or you can just put just a blank statement. I said, as a team, we would like to continue work on credit payment and also engage on some work on the other IP was what on home something, on home blah blah blah. And then I have all of these. I go ahead and start my sprint. Now remember, when I start my sprint, remember that this story was a rollover and it was ready for acceptance. For some reason, this was not accepted. Right. So it pulls back here. So when you roll our story to the next sprint, when you launch the sprint, all the story go back to the point. Okay. So, and this is my springboard, and this is when we start doing the work. So the day you launch your sprint, you will not do daily stand up on that day, right? It's because that day that they need to go and start looking at any team member, start working on something, start pulling it in progress. You start seeing this reflect by the next day. All right. So now you understand what it means to commit to the right amount of work. And this is how you collaborate with your team to get all of this done, right? So if you can do this and understand this basic, you realize that the way I explain it by the beginning of this video, it's going to be easy peasy going. Okay. If you need more of this, you want to make sure that you join our community of practice. This is where we put you to go beyond the limit, right? We don't do it for you. Now, if you're looking for a space where you can call somebody at any time to answer a question, that is not our community. If you're looking for a place where you can learn and be pushed to do the right thing and not do what really like, right? Because when so many people call me, like, you know what? I know my problem. This is what I need. I don't need this. I don't need this. And now the reason I don't advise you to do that. You can go to the doctor and tell the doctor that, you know what? I want this medication. I don't want this medication. Now, when you come to a coach, it doesn't matter if it's me or any person. What you want to say is like, you know what? This is where I am. These are my challenges. What advice do you have for me? Now, the coach gives you an advice, and based on the advice, you can see what to take and what to not to keep. And now, the reason why a lot of people kind of get themselves into community that's not adding value, number one, they're looking for where they're gonna tell them it's $100 or maybe almost not in free. Yeah, and because of that, they're rushing there. Secondly, if you come tell me, oh, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want, I can create a result for you, even if I don't know. You're already giving me what I want. Based on that, I can motivate you. But the way you understand who is capable of helping you is when you raise a problem, they're able to diagnose. If they diagnose and get the result, you will know that they understand exactly what they're doing and they can help you. All right. So hopefully this actually helped you. And if this was useful, make sure you like, make sure you share, and I'm going to see you in the next video. When you actually like, comment, and share, it motivates me to create more content like this that is going to help you to become more efficient in your Agile journey. I'll see you in my next video.